Hey everyone, welcome to the Zia Wool Studio Buzz podcast, episode 50. Yes, how exciting. This is a podcast about knitting, about spinning, about yarn, about all kinds of woolly things, and about my little fiber company, yarn dyeing company, Zia Wools. And my name is Doug, and I am so happy we can spend some time together yet again. I was telling you in the last episode that I injured my foot, and with boiling dye water, which, goodness, I just should have paid attention. But also, I just wanted to tell you this is healing so slowly, and it's very annoying. So, yeah. On the other hand, I was lucky because it could be so much worse. Plus, it could be my hands where I would be able to knit. But I am able to knit. In fact, for a whole week after it happened, I was still dyeing in the studio. And it was okay. I just couldn't stay on my feet too long, but after a week when it was still not healed and still looking quite bad, I mean, not infected bad, but just still very, very visible and couldn't put on shoes. So I knew I would have to slow down a little bit, and that's what I've been doing. But I also wanted to remind you all out there. I know there's a lot of people who dye at home, who just dabble in the dyeing fun, which is absolutely great, and this is where we all started. But please be careful, okay? Because things happen and it's just so frustrating when they do. I feel like we take our health for granted, and when something happens and our bodies don't function the way they normally do, it's just frustrating, and makes us realize how lucky we are if we're healthy. Yes, but enough of that. I want to start this knitting section with a finished object that maybe you have already seen on Ravelry, because I'm so excited. I finished my Across the Desert fingerless mitts, and they are right now in the top 5 hot patterns on the front page, which is such an honor to me. And everybody who has already designed a pattern is gonna know how exciting it is to come up with something and to put it in writing and to put in all the work and all the effort to make it look good and without mistakes, hopefully, and to pick good yarn and to take good pictures so that people can actually reproduce a beautiful result. And that's just very exciting when it all comes together and it's finally published. And so I have to thank my test knitters at this point, who were just awesome and kind of did them relatively quickly, found a mistake in the few mistakes, but also that the thumb was too big, and which we fixed. And so now I think I hope that a lot of people are going to find it a fun and gratifying knit. And I wanted to show you again the pair that I made, and I have made these with some 2-ply hand-spun yarn, probably hand-dyed fibers by me as well. Rambouillet, I would assume, as I have been doing in the past year a lot. And this is how they look like. Mike is looking. Hey, baby, you like them too? Look. Yes. So first of all, so I don't forget, I put the pattern up on Ravelry across the desert. I put it up yesterday, so it would be available on Valentine's Day if you wanted to cast on something special. And I announced it on Instagram, and I also put on the pattern page that for 1 week with the code Be Mine, all capitals, 2 words, you can get the pattern for free for 1 week. And my reason is this is my way of celebrating Valentine's Day, but also my wedding anniversary. We got married on a Friday, the 13th, which brought nothing but luck to us as a couple. And we had that was the civil wedding, and our church wedding was a week later on the 21st, and that's where the code is going to expire. So if you haven't gotten your pattern, do it now. You have a few more days left. And I wanted to thank those of you who have already downloaded them at this point. And I am looking forward to seeing a lot of projects on everybody's sites in your feed on Ravelry, because it's just the fun part then also for a designer when you see your pattern knitted up with different yarns. Yes, I have made these just real quick with 2.5 millimeter needles, like I said, in a hand spun yarn. I have made for myself the size large. The pattern comes in 3 sizes, and there is no ribbing at the edge or at the wrist that goes all the way around. I just have continued the ribbing that's kind of a part of the lace here towards the end, and also this is how the mitt starts. If you are the kind of person who doesn't like that, when an edge rolls a little bit, you can, of course, mirror the ribbing the way it's done on the upper side of the mitts. You could carry that over to the back side, or you could add another 2 purl stitches on the 2 sides, of course also on the wrist. What I have done here is I made myself some blockers. I had a placemat, one of those squishy material placemats, and I just cut out a straight piece. I put the mitts on. I put a wet dish towel on it, and just put my hot iron on there to give it a good steam. I let them dry like that. Of course, as you put the iron on, you want to make sure that your edge is not rolled. Of course. That was one thing that I wanted to recommend. And you see, I mean, of course you can refresh that after a while as it loosens up. I would assume after a while of using the mitts, it would start rolling again. It doesn't bother me too much. The thumbs look massive, but I'm going to put it on again. This fits me perfectly. And I do know from my testers that some people have skinnier thumbs, some even very much skinnier. And I put in the pattern an option for decreasing 1 more stitch here, because I don't know if you can see that, but right here I do work a decrease to make the thumb a nicer fit. One thing, so you can decrease another stitch here, but like one of my testers, she has a very skinny thumb, I mean, she says it herself, it's nothing that I make up. But what she ended up doing, and I thought I'd tell you that because I found it very cool. The increases for the thumb are done in every third row, but she ended up, because she wanted to preserve the length of this area, so she worked the increases for the thumb every fourth row. So she would keep this length, but end up with quite a bit less stitches, and it worked out very well for her. Yes. So I had, of course, to cast on another one. In this case, I did it in a medium size, but you may be able to see that it's the same size, because I could tell that my yarn was slightly heavier than the orange, so I thought, let's just try the medium. And it is also super nice. Yep, like it. Have only started the second one, and now my cat is lying on everything. You silly kitty. I haven't even started the lace. That's how far I am. And this is also hand spun. Again, my bookkeeper, I should fire her. This girl, she's just too scatterbrained. She never puts the tags on the hand spun. I have no idea what this is. Spun by me, of course. It looks like it has some kind of a silk, actually, but it doesn't look silky, but there's some white bits, but I wouldn't know what else it would be. I wouldn't buy a cotton merino blend. Don't know. It's gonna stay a mystery forever. I finished this, and then I finished something else. You may guess. No, it's not this. Where's the pattern? Probably the cat's on top of it. I have no idea. Oh, I found it. Very good. It's my Cowboys and Angels. I showed it to you last time. I had started making it with hand spun yarn. I can't recall how far along I was, but I finished it just 2 or 3 days ago. I blocked it. I put it in my washing machine. It's a front loader with the drain and spin program. And I just talked to a friend. She said she once felt it something that way. Turned out, as we talked about it, her washing machine adds water when it's that step. Mine doesn't do that. Mine really only drains and spins. So be careful before you repeat the same thing with your washing machine. Make sure it works so you don't felt whatever beautiful thing you have made. And without further ado, I want to show you my Cowboys and Angel made with hand spun yarn. Whoops. This is made with 4.5 millimeter needles, and more information you can find on it's already in my projects. I am Paper Dag on Ravelry. So I had a decent amount of this hand spun, which is a Rambouillet that I had dyed. Super nice shades of colors, and I knew the yardage was probably not going to be enough. So I had already been stash diving among my hand spun yarns. I had found some merino, and of course I did need the merino. And what I ended up doing was I knitted to just before the next pattern section, and when I started this, I also started with a new yarn because I didn't want it to show too much, because I could tell the more I looked at it, hey, this has no purple, this only has the green and the turquoise. So I didn't want it to really be a break here in the middle of this other section, which, by the way, is supposed to be knitted all in garter, but I didn't want it to be too thick because it was a heavier yarn anyway, so I decided to do stockinette and alternate with those purl ridges. So when I was down here, I did not do the baubles yet again. I was already supposed to do some up here, didn't do them here, didn't do them here. I feel like I did a few more rows of this beautiful pattern, and then I added just one section with the purl ridges. I mean, 2 purl ridges, and then this is the finishing part. After this, I ended up using this yarn and this yarn, and both, alternating them. 2 rows, 1 yarn, 2 rows, the next yarn. And the reason being plain and simple that I wanted to use up the yarn, and I didn't want to just do it in blocks because this yarn turned out to be quite a bit thinner. And if you spin, you probably know that maybe you've been at that point. You were spinning a larger amount of yarn and you're like, oh wow, I have quite a variation in my yarn, which is very annoying when you're spinning for a garment. In this case, it was fine using 2 different weights because this kind of worked well for the lace section. I just thought if I use it, I just didn't want it to be a break here in that final section. But also I wanted to use up everything, which I did. I mean, it worked. What I did worked. You don't need to know all the details. I just wanted to mention it so you know, hey, in a shawl, it's not always super duper crucial to have 100% the same weight when it comes to your hand spun yarn. You can figure out something, and it sure worked here. I did use up all my yarn, and I lost in Yarn Chicken, which was not a problem. I didn't really try to make the yarn work because I know I have so many leftovers, which in fact I could have used to make the shawl even bigger. I didn't even think of that. I don't know why. But I use a lot of little bits to finish the cast off edge, and you can see it a little bit here. And that was to the extent that in the end, I probably had 10 or 12 ends to weave in that were all hanging from my cast off edge. That was fine. What I did was, when I finished it and after I washed it, I did the drain and spin, as I said, but then the drain and spin makes it really just moist, so it dries for me overnight. So I put it upstairs on the guest bed, and I used my blocking wires, which I did not do when I did the last shawl, because sometimes, I don't know, they feel fiddly, or you think I thought that's a lot of work to put them in right. Here, I'm like, what was I even thinking when I didn't use them on the last one? This was just so great. It made it a lot easier. Sure, you have a lot of fiddling to do when you lace them into your edge, but then once you get them in, it's a matter of a minute or two to really put it in the right shape, where the other way with needles only, it takes a lot longer. You see the top edge, I did not use blocking wires. This has a little bit, so I didn't do a very good job here. That was just me. It's not the pattern, but I don't think it shows much. Yeah, last night I was sitting here. I had it draped over my shoulders. I was a little chilly, and it's just super beautiful. And it's huge too. I mean, I love everything about this thing. Couldn't be happier. And another interesting thing was, to me, this is a 2-ply yarn, and it felt soft in the skein. As I knitted it up, I thought, kind of like a stiffer fabric, but I thought, whatever, it's going to be, more like it's not supposed to be super soft. Let's just put it that way. But after I washed this and after it was dry, it has gained so much drape. It's just, I wish you could touch it and see the difference. It was very interesting to me. Yeah. That was my Cowboys and Angels. And not sure. I feel like Isabel Kramer designed this after she was in New Mexico 2 years ago. Not sure. Excuse me for one moment. So I finished the mitts, finished the shawl. When I was looking for some handspun leftovers for that cast off edge, I found my mini handspun leftovers in a little box here on the sofa, and also with the project that I had recently started, and I frogged it. It was the seat cushion. I don't even know how to call it. I did the song blanket. I have it back here. A smaller version, smaller squares with handspun leftovers holding 3 threads together with 7mm needles. And I feel like I had already done 5 squares, and I have frogged 4 of those. And I thought, I gotta keep one to show you guys. Here it is. Well, the thing was that I thought maybe I'm gonna sit out in that corner by the front door in the sunshine on a nice winter day with Mom. Maybe we knit outside and we put this on the seat, and it's gonna be really nice and warm, but I don't know. We just ended up always staying on the sofa inside. Maybe we had a fire going. Maybe it never was warm enough that we thought, let's go outside. I don't know. And now she's gone, and there's no reason to finish this, except for maybe for next year. But probably next year the same thing is going to happen. We're going to stay inside on the sofa. So yes, this was probably the wise thing to not finish this. However, now I need new ideas for handspun leftovers. I have so many leftovers, and there's these beautiful yarns in there. I have, like this one, I love so much, because this was a leftover from a sweater that I made for my daughter when she was maybe 6 or 7 or so. So cute. Super soft yarn. This is a sweater that I haven't worn it in ages. Yep. Yeah, so much about that. Let's just So you know this is going to be frogged. We'll see what I come up with to use the leftovers. What next? So with all these things finished, I was like, what am I going to do? I will now cast on something which I saw in a German podcast. And I thought, this is going to be so great. I'm going to make the true friend. You hear this big sigh because I had my yarn ready. This was going to be the main color, beautiful color. Dyed it up for me to make something for me. It's a blend that has alpaca. It's super soft. I love alpaca. I had a really fun contrasting speckled yarn. What happened was I did my gauge swatch and it was so insanely off that I knew I could not even dare to try making this. Made me so frustrated that I abandoned the whole sweater idea completely, and I just put my sweater yarn back in a bin, and I thought, well, I'm gonna just see until something else comes along. I mean, of course, I could dye a lace yarn in matching colors to hold it with this, even though this is not a standard colorway. I mean, I can get it close enough with a lace and then get the weight that I need, even though this is fingering, but I guess I would need a DK to get the gauge. I don't even know. I was so frustrated that I lost interest at that point, and I'm like, whatever, I'll figure it out at another time. You know that I started spinning yarn for the cardigan. I was already ready to do the second batch. That didn't work out either, and when I talk a little bit more about spinning, I'm going to tell you more about that. So I did not continue or start over working on the Myrta cardigan that I showed you last time. So what else? I had another idea. I stumbled across this beautiful pattern, which I must have bought, I'm thinking probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I feel like this is a little bit embarrassing. I feel like I already started this with the same yarn that I dug out again. And I thought, okay, I'm going to tackle this again now. This is going to be so fun. That's really me. It's very funky. It's a little bit different. It's something that you don't see every day. I'm going to have so much fun, and I have the perfect yarn. I got that yarn out, and I am talking about the yarn that I saw just this fantastic interview of the dyer who dyes this yarn on the Fruity Knitting podcast. I don't think the current episode, I think it was the last episode, but this yarn, I just love this so much. And guess what? These I got at my yarn store. They discontinued them and sold them for a steal. I want to say 50% off. So I got 2 of each of these colors. I pulled them all out because I thought, oh, maybe I'll combine all of these, even though they're not 100%, matchy blending into each other. But I thought that's gonna be fine. But I thought, I wonder if I feel like I started 2 or 3 years ago with this yarn. And I could not remember why I quit. I'm thinking maybe because I didn't have the yardage. This yarn, by the way, is as soft as butter. 80% alpaca and 20% silk. And the colors are just fantastic. But let me show you how far I got if I can move this naughty cat, and yes, he is allowed to lounge on my yarns, but not on shop yarns. Yes, that's what's left of my humble beginnings. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I had to say goodbye to my daughter, right? Yeah, so I started and I didn't like it one single bit. I don't know. This yarn and this shawl, they're not right for each other. So again, it will go back with my lace yarn treasures, and it will be waiting for the perfect project, which I know is going to come at some point. This is just too beautiful. But it's also too beautiful to waste in something that is not right. I have seen this pattern knitted up at least partially in the Made with Carlenergy podcast. It's been a few years because Carlene does not sadly record any more podcasts. I don't even know if they're still up on YouTube, but she made hers with hand spun yarn. I can't remember if she really spun it as a gradient, kind of Navajo plied, or what she did. Maybe I'll try to find out, because maybe that's what this is supposed to be. And maybe I gotta make it with hand spun as well. And yes, I have plenty of hand spun. That shouldn't be a problem. Or I also have plenty of fibers that I could spin a little bit more like a gradient. And I also should have enough that would give me a nice drape with bamboo or tencel or silk. So stay tuned, eventually this will come. So there I was, just 1 or 2 weeks away from a knitting retreat where my husband was gonna drive to with the car so I could bring an infinite amount of works in progress. Yes, yet I still had not found anything new to cast on. I was not really sure what to bring. I'm always for a good sock project, but socks for a knitting retreat, dear, oh my goodness, yes, that's way too boring. No. So I had to come up with something. Next thing was I dug out my projects, my UFOs, and found, of course, the Meristem, which lives in this bag and had not been touched by me, but only by my cats, as you can see by the cat hair on the bag. Oh, that's a bag that I made, which I never made it in the shop because you see the lining through, which I thought was totally annoying. But I love the fabric, fairy tale fabric. So I had this beautiful hedgehog sock yarn that was gifted to me by a dear friend, Dizu. And I had 2 skeins of this, and I had started making the Meristem lace shawl, and the Meristem lace shawl is so beautiful. And one of the knitted samples on the pattern page on Ravelry is done in a similar green, and I thought, that's what I want. I need a nice green lace shawl. The bigger the better. I ended up having calculated my yardage, or looked at the yardage that I get from my 2 balls of yarn, and I thought, I don't have enough. This is not going to be enough. I then decided to make the smaller size. The pattern gives you two options, a small and a large size. The large size is giant. Also, I thought, I haven't done that much lace. Who knows how that would go, but actually I was fine. But I'm doing okay with lace knitting, but I should say 2 nights ago when I picked that up again, I think I started knitting at 9:30 at night or so. Before I had been working constant. I had used up a lot of concentration for doing the corrections on the across the desert mitts, and so I guess maybe I used up all my concentration for that day, because when I crashed in front of the TV and I wanted to knit, I was fine doing two rows. One lace row. The back row was purl only, so those two were fine. One lace, one purl. Purl especially easy enough. But then I wanted to get to the next, when I started the next row, I'm like, I have some major mistakes. And that's why when I showed the shawl on the German podcast yesterday, I was just in the middle of the row, and I had not touched it anymore, because I could tell I have to really focus to fix this thing. I did it. And I ended up knitting a lot more yesterday, so much that I am already in the process of casting off. And I'm going to show it to you right now, and then I'm going to show you all the 50 concerns I have with this thing that I already mentioned in the German episode. So this is where I am. So there is something in the design at a certain point where you are supposed to go one needle size up. I see this here. You probably see it too, but then again, also the pattern changes quite a bit. I have to say, this section with those large leaves, that's my favorite part. I just love this very, very much. I love the mint green. This frilly, kind of wavy, ruchy ending, I am not too much a fan of. And I can tell you that I even changed something here. I knocked out a few of the yarn overs out of the pattern repeat, maybe one or two in the last two rows, which when I knocked it out in the first row, it was fine. In the second row, I realized while I was knitting that of course I had a stitch less. But if you think a little bit, you can very much then read your knitting, because that you can see that your decreases where you knit 3 stitches together have of course to be over this pointy thing and not 1 stitch over. So that all of that easy to fix. I'm not so sure how I like this being so loose in comparison to this, which of course comes due to the changing in the needle. And I don't understand why I had to, I always want to understand these things. Why do I have to change to a larger needle when I'm at this point constantly increasing the stitch count too. So that was one thing that there's just these few things that bug me. These are some that I told you already. And then look at this. I am not even done with the first ball of yarn, and I have one full ball of yarn left. And now I'm like, why did I not do the large one? I thought yesterday, well, I'm going to have to do some real soul searching and see if I even finish this, because it's probably going to be little. It's not going to be large. It's going to be just one of those teensy things on the neck. Now, then I thought later, well, let's just keep going. You're almost at the end. Finish the thing and then make your decision. So right now I am still, that's where I am right now. I am finishing the thing, and let me see, where's the middle? Okay, this is the middle. So this is the middle. I'm not quite there yet with my casting off. But, and I'm assuming that it's going to be kind of like a moon shape. And it might be okay, or it might not be okay. Well, oh yeah, not too bad. I'm just annoyed that I have so much yarn left over now. As far as I remember, and I'm going to have to reread this, I think that at this point where I put these markers, let me show you this guy here. This is where I marked certain locations in the pattern where after this you were continuing in a different way for the two different sizes. And I am honestly tempted to go back to this spot and to redo the shawl. Also because, I mean, up here I love the fabric. Down here I'm like, whoa, why? I mean, it's all pretty and all, and maybe I should just block it. I think that's what I'm gonna do. But then I still have so much yarn left. That's my other thing. I mean, even if it blocks out to a large size, I still have a whole ball of yarn left. Why? And if I, what did I do with the, no, I don't know where I put the minty color that I was considering. Oh, here it is. No, also very different. Well, I could totally dye up something that's matchy enough to finish the shawl if it doesn't work out. And this is hedgehog. They dye very differently with all their speckles, but maybe a hedgehog for the bottom lace. And I would probably most likely, unless during blocking each other, I just don't know. If I finish the thing and I've blocked it, that then I would rip back. I think I would have to rip back now. I just don't know. I don't know. I have to do some soul searching, or give me some input. Write me a comment. Say, finish it. You will regret it. You will not touch it anymore. But I'm confident I could rip back and pick up my stitches. I'm okay at that. And if I look at this is just so annoying. This little, see what I'm saying? It's not quite my style. I should have seen this on the pattern page, but everything, I mean, you cannot, I looked again today, I could not tell on all the projects that I looked at, I could not tell that there is anything that annoys me when I look at the shawls. However, I would have loved the large size. That's what I said from the get-go. And like I said, maybe I should redraw the chart up here too. There's so much going on here because this is kind of like, this is very much like I think this is the same as you work the ending of the large size, so it would be the same. But for sure I could knit it with the smaller needles. I don't think it would be a problem. I just don't know. I don't know. I will think on it and then I will decide. However, I have, cat, give me this. This is mine. I have dyed up a new colorway. This beauty is called Juniper and it's on my Santa Fe base. And as I was browsing the patterns on Ravelry to see what I could do, I remembered that my mom's, that I got into the habit, we made it a tradition that I knit something for her for Mother's Day. And so I thought, hey, I think she would love the color. And I had something simple in my queue where she has not, I've made her triangles before, and I thought, oh, that would be something different, kind of more like a shawl or a stole. However, I'm not making it quite as wide as this one. The pattern is an English pattern, even though I'm thinking maybe it could be, I think the designer is German. So she gives you an idea of how to narrow the pattern, narrow the shawl, and I just took away one pattern repeat. I did that. And I started and I am already loving it. I think I started 2 nights ago. I mean, I've done the other one, the green Meristem in between. But this, I am so in love with this. Oh yes, and since I haven't mentioned it, this is 50/50 merino silk. I adore this. It's just so joyful to knit up because it feels so good with the silk, with the high silk content. And I love the colorway. I love everything about this. Oh, it's so nice. Yeah. I put the 2 skeins aside. It's a fingering weight yarn. It's about a 400 yards per skein, roughly. Roughly. And it's going to be fine. I'm just going to knit until I run out of yarn. And so I have at least one simple travel project, retreat project, which will be fun to make and really, easy enough so you can talk, but a little bit of interest. And I want to get it done to give it to Mom in May. And so, yeah, all good. I found one good project. I keep going now. I keep thinking about the Meristem. I think I'm really gonna not continue to cast off because I don't want to be stuck with a whole ball of yarn left. What would you do? Would you frog it and go back? I think I can figure it out. Okay, now on to spinning, because as you know, I've been really spinning a lot. Also, after I hurt my foot, I was on the wheel. I've been spinning quite a bit. It was okay for my foot. It didn't bother me. I showed you the one skein last time that I was already super excited about, and here it is again. I don't think it was washed last time. I'm still super in love with this. I love the feel. I love everything about this, the squishiness and everything. I also carded and spun a few more samples for the blue cardigan. And I may have mentioned, I can't recall, that I had another batch of blue alpaca. And come on, kitty. Oh, goodness, this silly boy. One more. And so I had this other batch of blue, but I don't know, I started working with it and experimenting with it and made these 3 sample mini skeins. They're all 2-ply, like the other batch that I showed in the last episode. However, I was trying a little bit to do things a little bit different with the carding, the way I layered the fibers onto the drum carder, and also the way I spun it. Some I spun from Rolex that I pulled off the drum carder, and others I thought, well, I'm going to try tearing off strips from my bat and spin those. Nothing made me happy in the spinning process, and in the end, I blame it on the fiber length. I feel that all the alpaca, the blue alpaca, is just very short fibered. All the staple length is short, and I started then, I talked with my friend Sherry of Twisted Dye Kitchen. I asked her because she's just super amazing at making bats. Hi, Sherry. You are. But it was just never right. So I sandwiched, in the end, I completely sandwiched those short fibers between longer fibers of, I think I used some of my Rambouillet. I used some commercial Rambouillet that I purchased, dyed in a D-stash. And one time, one of my little desert dogs fell under my chair, so it got left over, and I thought I'll bring it to you this way. You can see what I'm talking about. Here I had the blue in the middle layer. So I have long fibers on the bottom, then I have the blue alpaca, and again longer fibers on top, and I rolled them up like this. But I found, like, all together, I walked away from all my experiments thinking, dang, I'm not enjoying this very much. I'm not enjoying spinning this so much. I was, for a little while, super happy with that other yarn that I got. I was super happy with that other yarn that I got, but it was another batch of another slightly different blue alpaca that I had already spun up that I realized I didn't have enough of for the cardigan. So with this one, now I'm sure I have enough alpaca, but the spinning in itself was not so pleasant. I don't know. I'm looking at these and now I'm thinking, dang, that's a beautiful yarn. Maybe I was just altogether kind of getting a little bit tired of all of this. Maybe I should just give it a rest. I think that's what I will do, because I did not continue now with this, because I know I'm going out of town, I'm going to be traveling, and I did not want to start spinning a large amount of yarn for a cardigan, then leaving, then having to come back to it and kind of thinking, how did I do the spinning? How did I do the carding? So that was my thought. On the other hand, it's also not a super duper soft yarn. It's a little bit, it can't be a baby alpaca. It's a little bit more rustic, which is okay for a cardigan. But then again, I thought, maybe I should. I remembered I have a merino silk blend where I have a large amount of that, which would also make a great base color for a cardigan, where I could put all my bits and bobs into it and make it a little more interesting. I have this one again. My secretary, this woman is impossible. She did not put any note onto this, so I have no idea what this is. I mean, of course it's the same, but how the difference is in the prep. Drum carded sample for cardigan. One bat pulled off as 4 desert dogs, layered alpaca first, ended with Rambouillet commercially processed Rambouillet and dyed by another dyer. Spins into the world, by the way. Spins a little bit smoother than the first test mini skein. Blue alpaca, short fiber, too much stays on drum when pulling off. As far as I remember, this was nicer to spin, but then I have had so much left on the drum, so that was not an option. All of these 2-ply, by the way, I think I told you that. Blue on the outside on the drum carder, on the inside of the desert dogs. Was able to draft finer, sample for cardigan. That was interesting. Yeah. I mean, all of these yarns are just still beautiful. So maybe I'm just gonna have to quit being annoyed. My last samples came, by the way, my husband, he was vacuum in the laundry room, and apparently there was a lot of like dust from the dryer, stuff everywhere. And so he was being the good husband and vacuum all over, and kind of also up high somewhere, strangely, which, I mean, I'm not complaining about him vacuum, no. But all of a sudden he told me, I'm sorry, your yarn is gone. So I had another one of these mini skeins. I saved it. I got it out of the vacuum cleaner, but I think it suffered a little bit. It's just this picture of him vacuum in there, and all of a sudden this mini skein of yarn be gone. Too funny. Yeah, also this little guy. I have a lot of little guys here. What does this one say? Spun from stripped bat. Bat had probably more blue than the desert dogs. So the other ones, what? Why would this have more blue? It didn't. This one looks bluer. That's interesting. Carded twice, more blended. Also not really visible, right? This guy. Okay, oh well. I am spinning all of these beauties. By the way, I haven't talked about that in a while. On my wonderful all-time favorite wheel that I use pretty much all the time these days, it's my Lendrum Saxony wheel. And I know that if you are a Lendrum fan and you have been considering getting this wheel, you may know that it now takes several years to waiting time if you want one, because yeah, they're in high demand. Mine, I think back then I waited just maybe 1.5 years or so, but now I don't even know how you can get yours. Yeah, I was lucky back then. And one time I met Gord Landrum at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, which was a total fangirl moment. Very cool. I barely remember anything, but of course I do not have a picture. I wish I did, yeah. Because I also own the folding wheel. I'm just not spinning with it much these days. So I mentioned that because I feel like when you spin a very fine yarn, this is an advantage when you have a fast wheel, because otherwise it takes you ages to spin a fine yarn. And as I was telling you in the last podcast, and I showed a little bit of the fibers also, I wanted to spin the brown locks and card into them the last bits of the dyed locks. I think I kept all the darker colors, a little bit of a dark red and a dark blue. And like I said, I had that dark brown, gray brown. And I finished this yarn, and I'm not a brown person. However, I can honestly say that this is the most beautiful yarn that I have ever spun. And I am so that I'm able to show you this in a skein shows you how excited I am about it, because I so badly want to knit with it, but I feel like you can much more appreciate it in the skein, and I really wanted you to see it like this. I'm going to come a little bit closer, because like this you see, oh yeah, dark brown blob, but close up, the variation in this and the depth and the beauty, it's so wonderful. I have about I should have about 700 yards. After with washing, this has a lot of bounciness, and with the washing, it crunched together. I mean, of course, as you spin it, and I did spin this from a bat. Every bat was carded, drum carded twice on my stroke, on my beautiful stroke drum carder. And then I stripped each bat into probably 4 or 5 strips and spun from those. And it took me nearly a week to spin everything. And the plying, which is the fast part, even though it's so fast, it still took me, I want to say, about 3 hours. Another thing that I learned from this is really how much it takes to be a master spinner. I don't claim to be, but I was thinking so much of the women in the Shetlands who, the women who made their money with spinning yarn for those beautiful lace shawls, because as far as I understand, it's usually it's 2 different people. You have the spinners that specialize in creating that beautiful and one-of-a-kind lace yarn for those very delicate and highly expensive lace shawls. Back in the days when people actually could make a living from it. I would say that these days people only do it as a hobby, right? Yeah, I want to make a lace shawl with this, and I am really super much looking forward to casting it on. But like I said, I wanted to show it to you as it is, and I also wanted you to see why I talk about, masters, spinners and all. I am not. I have a lot of variation still in every skein, and even though I plucked out every bit of VM that I came upon, I mean, there may be the occasional one still in there, but also these little baubles that are in there, stuff like that. You would have to get out of the yarn if you were wanting to produce a suitable yarn for those Shetland lace shawls. Yeah, that's one amazing skill that those women have who can spin a yarn like that. I am still extremely happy with this, and I have already a plan for it. It's not unlimited in the yardage, and my idea was that I am going to make a shawl which sadly is not available in an English translation. There is, however, a chart, and I'm just going to wave it here because it is a free pattern, and I'm going to put the name of the pattern on the screen if that is something that you're interested in. You could certainly try to make it from the charts, and I will report when I have started with this. I was thinking I want a triangle, and I want a shawl which has a lot of stock in it, and that's what this one is going to have. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes, and that is it. I know I threw out the question whether you guys would be interested in, excuse me, in a little bit more spinning content. And I will always, when I talk about spinning, put this at the end of the podcast, so those of you who are not so interested can just, zone out and turn it off. But this is what I'm thinking I'm going to do, and possibly, I know some of you have expressed an interest in seeing a little bit more about my way of spinning, about how I spin, which I would probably then do in a separate video, kind of like a little bit more of a fluff to yarn kind of thing. But since I'm going to be traveling to the retreat, it's going to be a little while before I'm going to be able to do that. And in the meantime, the only thing that I have left to do is to show you some of the new yarns that I'm so excited about. I have dyed a lot, and I apologize because hardly anything is in the shop, and that's why I barely brought anything. I just brought you 2 things that I'm very excited about. 4 things. And only one of them is in the shop, which is this one, and that's the Enchanted Lovers On My Taos sock yarn. This is called Boots and Lace, and this is called Boots and Bolos, and they come as a set as Enchanted Lovers. I know that the last set on Sandia sold, and this is my Taos yarn that's still available. Corriedale, I always find it a little bit hard to describe because I want to say it's my more rustic sock yarn, and because that's how it feels like. It just feels more rustic, but it's really one of my go-to yarns for socks these days. I mean, it changes all the time, of course, but I really love the Corriedale because it very much softens and gets a little fuzzy halo with washing. So it's not really rustic. It's more rustic than merino, but it's not rustic. So the Enchanted Lovers. I also brought you a skein of this new purple, which is a colorway that I named, of course, I had to, Purple Rain. And it is a I tried a new technique where I can totally say, don't ever make a sweater of this, because probably most likely, even though they're dyed at the same time, all four skeins might be very different. But it would be so beautiful and nicely variegated for a shawl where you could use two skeins for a shawl and get a lot of variation, or you could combine it with a different color, like with a hot pink or so, because it also has some hot pink speckles in there, and I'm sure it would look fabulous. The other one is one that is gonna go onto my needles super as soon as I have a great idea on what to use it for. This is the other one was a singles yarn, my Roadrunner base, and this one is my cashmere blend, which I call Zia Zen, and this is the colorway Summer Rain, because it made me think of a gentle and soft summer rain with a little bit of green growth. Then super happy. This is, again, I just love it when this happens, when you find something where you're like, this is completely not my normal color choice, but even though it's not, I still love it so hard. Yeah, and that's one of these, just like the brown handspun. And we have come to the end, my friends. This was fun, as it always is. Okay, the video just stopped. I mean, the camera just stopped recording. So I'm ready to say my goodbyes again. Thank you for spending time with me, and I will see you again in about, maybe this time in 3 weeks. But until then, I wish you happy knitting. Bye.